The Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and your local cable provider presents Cable Reports. Join us now as Cable Reports brings you up to date on current issues facing the Commonwealth through discussions with your local legislators and other policymakers from across Virginia.
From the General Assembly and the City of Richmond, I'm Woody Evans for Cable Reports and Comcast, connecting Virginians with their government. And today we'd like to connect you with three members of the House of Delegates. Peter Farrell, welcome, sir.
Thank you very much for having me.
Riley Ingram, good to see you.
Thank you, Woody.
Jimmy Massie, good to see you, sir.
Thank you, Woody.
Now let's talk a little bit about Henrico County. I know you represent parts of Henrico County and other areas, but tell us how things are going on there economically.
Yeah, we're very fortunate in Henrico County, Woody. And just to step back one level, too, we're very fortunate in the state of Virginia. I mean, the state of Virginia is the best managed state, best state to do business in, fourth best state to raise a child in. We have the finest system of public higher education. On and on and on, Virginia finishes in the top 5. And we charge our citizens the 48th lowest price in the country out of 50 states, state and local taxation as a percentage of the average Virginian's income. And in Henrico County, there are 3,500-ish counties in the country. Only 34 of them are AAA rated. Henrico is one of those 34. It's a very well-run county. We have great schools, great public safety. So, you know, living in Virginia and living in Henrico County is a lot to be thankful for.
Delegate Ingram, why is it so important for the state of Virginia and Henrico County and other counties to maintain AAA bond rating?
Because of the interest rates, Woody, that they pay, it saves them a lot of money by having a AAA bond rating. And Henrico County, as you know, just passed the food tax. And I personally think that it was a good move on the people, because if they did not pass that, they were going to have to go up on the real estate taxes to sustain the services that they provide. But Henrico is a well-ran county. Before, when Virgil Hayes just left, he did a great job. And John, now that's there, he's doing a great job and going to continue to do a good job. They have good leadership in Henrico, and I'm very proud to be a part of representing the county in Henrico.
Great. And Delegate Farrell, what are you hearing from your constituents about the issues they're concerned about this session?
Well, in my part of Henrico, it's very they're very centered around their schools. They really want to make sure their schools are good, they're getting the funding they need, and the teachers are getting what they need. One thing I do hear about, not only in Henrico but elsewhere, the one issue I've ever seen that unites students, parents, and teachers all at the same time, and that's SOL reform. And I think there will be some bipartisan support in that regard this year.
Now, those are the standards of learning, I believe?
The infamous standards of learning, which in principle do a very good job of keeping people accountable and making sure that our kids are learning what they need to learn. But at the same time, we haven't really looked at them in a very modern way in 20 years. And we have to make sure they're keeping up with the times.
And I know you're one of the younger members of the House of Delegates.
I am the third youngest member of the
House. I was talking to Delegate Yost from Giles County the other day, and he told me that he had actually taken an SOL. He's 27 years old, I believe.
Yes, no, and I haven't, because I went to collegiate. But yeah, Joe is 3 years younger, and then Will Moorfield is 6 months younger than I am. And the first day I got here, actually, in my first term, but Will didn't even ask, you know, how I was doing. He just wanted to know immediately how old I was. he really didn't want to get beaten by somebody else. So, but I got him by 6 months. I had already checked.
Tell us a little bit about your service on Commerce, Labor, and Finance.
Well, those are new committees for me this year. And I'm highly honored to be on them. I think finance is the revenue side. Jimmy and Riley are both on the appropriation side of what comes in, how do we spend it wisely. Well, we help decide how it's going to come in. Commerce and labor has been very interesting. It's a wide array of issues, from insurance to, you know, all kinds of insurance, really. It's not just health insurance. We have dental insurance. We deal with property and casualty. Banking is a big issue on commerce and labor, energy. So it's a very diverse, interesting subject matter, and really what I find important is, as Jimmy said, we're a pretty darn good state to do business in. And a lot of our job is to just make sure we keep it that way. So and that's really our focus. It's a bipartisan focus.
One of the high marks that the new governor gets is his cabinet appointments, and especially the retention of someone like, I believe it's Rick Brown, Finance. Have you been privy to any of his presentations about how the state finances are coming in?
I have been, and we actually had a joint money committee session, so these gentlemen to my left were there as well. And it's, you know, I don't think it would surprise anybody. You know, it's still what people keep saying, quote unquote, perhaps a soft recovery. It's pretty flat. Again, it's pretty soft. One upheaval, I think, would not be good for the system at all. So we're trying. I know from their approach and appropriations, so far they've been great keeping us informed, who are not on the committee, about, and so is the secretary, about how it's important to be wise, to be frugal, and because there's still a lot of uncertainty. And I know Jimmy and Riley can speak to that better than I can, but that's why I think it's important that they will discuss it. As of now, we're not really going to touch that $50 million unappropriated balance.
Well, Rick Brown is the best. I mean, he has been there through Democrat and Republican. He is bipartisan. He's not Democrat, he's not Republican, but he is excellent when it comes to the financing and knowing where the money is going and doing the budget. He does a great job.
And another one of the holdovers is Dr. Hazel, I believe, who's in charge of a real important subject that I know all of you want to talk about, and that's Medicaid expansion. And I know that you serve on the Medicaid Commission dealing with that subject.
Yeah, I think it's great that we have that continuity with Rick Brown, and it's great we have, because he's the budget, and then Medicaid is going to be a big topic. So having the continuity with Bill Hazel is I think it was a good decision by the governor. Woody, I would tell you on Medicaid expansion, I mean, I would say that Peter, Riley, and myself, we are government minimalists. We only want government doing the things it has to do. One of the things government does have to do is take care of those people that aren't capable of taking care of themselves. So we do believe in that. Having said that, we have a lot of concerns about the expansion of Obamacare and Medicaid in the state of Virginia. I mean, you know, we don't. There's no program we spend more money on than Medicaid in the state of Virginia. We spend about $9 billion a year in the state of Virginia on Medicaid. 4.5 of it's state funds, 4.5 of it's federal funds. Secretary Hazel made a presentation to us in the Medicaid Innovation Reform Commission, telling us that about 30% of that money is fraud, waste, and inefficiencies in the system. So it's really hard to argue to me and to my constituents that we should expand a program that we have 30% waste, fraud, and inefficiencies in. So our approach in the House is that we want to reform the program first. So we have a very significant set of reforms, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and I think you're going to see us come up with a phase 4 set of reforms. We want to reform the existing program first. Then we also want to look at what's going on around the country. I mean, you know, in my business life, I tell everybody I'd much rather be a good imitator than a risky originator. So we're getting to watch what's going on in the west of the country and try to, you know, pull the nuggets out, and you know, hopefully we'll end up with a Virginia way sometime down the future. But I don't see Medicaid expansion in this session. And then finally, I would say, you know, this promise the federal government's making to us that they're going to pay 100% of the cost for the first 3 years, and then it goes down 2.5% a year for 4 years to get to 90%. You know, I'm a banker, an investment banker, highly trained in credit analysis. And if anybody came into me and said, hey, we're in partnership, in a Medicaid partnership, and I want to expand this partnership with you, and don't worry because I'm going to pay 100% of the cost for the first 3 years and 90% thereafter. I said, man, that Peter and I are business guys, Riley's a business guy. We said, that sounds like a great deal. But let me see your financial statements so I can do a credit analysis, because this is a partnership that's going to go on 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and it's a huge issue. And if any context other than the federal government, Riley and Peter and I looked at their financial statements, you know, I would laugh at them. I say, there's no way in the world the federal government, given the way its finances are, is going to be able to meet that commitment under current circumstances. So we want to take care of those who can't take care of themselves, but we don't want to reform an inefficient system. We don't want, you know, we're worried about the federal government being able to meet its commitments, and we're going to look really hard at what else is going on around the country and just be patient and try to find a way.
Riley, of course, the new governor says, now let me do it.
Yeah. Well, just like Jimmy was just saying, Woody, what all of us are concerned about is the amount of money that the federal government is spending. If China pulled a plug on us right now and said, we want our money, we would probably be bankrupt because we cannot pay them right now. But yet we have money because we keep printing money and going further and further in debt. We cannot continue to do that.
And Doug and Farrell, of course, the Commonwealth is required by way of its Constitution to balance its budget.
Correct.
The federal government is not.
They are not, and it shows, I think. And again, to talk about this, with the Medicaid argument, what I think is you have the mix of what is a financial analysis and a social discussion as well, and they're mixing together. And right now that creates passion, obviously, and it's important. I think what the other side would like a lot of people to believe is that there are only two options right now. Only two. That's it. You either expand it or you don't, and you're against it totally. And that's just not true. I view this as an opportunity. I mean, for a long time, our side has been saying, hey, we think we can get innovative, we can reform the system, and really make it work for Virginians, because one size does not fit all. I mean, Arizona and Virginia are completely different. We could go state by state. Populations are different. Demographics are different. The systems need to be different. And this is a real opportunity for us, as Jimmy was talking about, with the reforms that we want to look at carefully and analytically to set up a sustainable system for our citizens going forward. Right now, if you just expand it as is, that is not the case. And I can't reemphasize what Jimmy said enough. With 30% fraud and waste, and then somebody who is saying they're going to pick up 90% of the obligation, who does not have a good balance sheet. Oh, and by the way, governments, and we actually have been guilty of this. We'll say to local governments, don't worry, guys, we'll pick up 75% of the tab. This is a great program. 5 years later, we hit financial issues, and we cut it to 50. So, and the feds have done it. I'm not worried about the 90 to 0 from the federal government. I'm not worried about the 90% to the 0 probably right now. But I am worried going from 90% to 75%. That's a huge amount of money that right now that anyone who looks at this from an analytical point of view would never sign up for. The private sector would never do this deal. But again, the social paradigm is incredibly important, and that's why we owe it to those people to take our time in an analytical and smart fashion to set up a sustainable system where those people can rely on getting care for the future.
And I would interject here too what Peter's saying. I think one thing that people of Virginia need to understand is Medicaid is the fastest growing part of our budget. You know, in the last 40 or 50 years, it's gone from 0% to 22% of our budget, Woody. Yeah. And so it's, you know, the money that we're spending on, so we're at 22%, $4.5 billion a year in the state funds we're spending on Medicaid. And it's projected to grow, I think, $700 million over this biennium, $300 and some million a year. So that's money that we're not able to spend on K-12 education. It's money we're not able to spend on public safety. It's not, and that's the existing program. And now you're talking about expanding it, you know, by 40%. You know, going from 1 million people covered to 1.4 million people covered in the state of Virginia. So I think the people of Virginia got to realize this is something we really need to do in a circumspect. It's a 5, 10, 15, 20, 40-year decision. We need to be slow and steady on this and get this right, or it's just going to eat us up and crowd out all the other priorities that we have in the state of Virginia.
And Peter just mentioned it about, you know, 90% and, you know, for the federal government, and then the smaller amount for the state. But I'll give you a couple examples. We've had 2 examples this year where the federal government, you know, there's not, you know, they'll pay for 3 years and then it's 0. They cut it out. Then the state has to pick it up. We just had an incident over in the city of Hopewell where they extended bus service into Hopewell, which is wonderful. But the federal government was going to pay for it. They gave a grant for 3 years and then stopped. So the city of Hopewell now has to pick it up $186,000 to $200,000 a year to take care of it. It's just growing and growing and growing. Government just keeps on growing.
And of course, there's another health-related issue, that's back in the news due to a tragedy that occurred to one of your colleagues in the Senate. mental health. And of course, the Commonwealth has been dealing with that issue for quite some time. Virginia Tech was another tragedy. And I believe you have some legislation in dealing with that.
What I have extends it from 24 hours.
That means the ability to detain someone?
Yes, for 24 hours. It extends it to 72 hours. I'm convinced that Creed Deeds' son, if they had the opportunity to hold him longer, he would be okay. In other words, and I think that it would have made a big difference, and that's what we're hoping to do, because it's a shame it takes a tragedy to really get things done. But Woody, it's true. It's true.
What about resources? I know we've thrown a lot of resources towards mental health, and of course, detention is not the only issue.
Right. Well, mental health issues are not an area of public policy expertise for Jimmy Massie, but you know, given the examples, it's something we need to do, and so we are making, it's one of the top 2 or 3 issues that we're going to be dealing with this year. The governor had, as I remember, about $30 million in his 2-year budget for increased funding for mental health. So I think it's such an important issue, Woody. You know, $30 million sounds like a lot of money, but over a biennium, it's $15 million a year out of an $18 billion a year budget. So I think we'll let the experts in mental health, and Riley's got a little expertise there, to come to us and decide, hey, this is what we should do. And then once they decide that, I think on the Appropriations Committee, we'll find the resources to do what the mental health experts tell us we should do.
And Delegate Farrell, is this something being discussed amongst your constituents and also the members you serve with on finance?
Of course, but really on the Education Committee as well, because a lot of, you know, the first people in a lot of cases to see children with mental health issues are those in the education world, at their schools. So it's very important. I think part of the issue with mental health, and the first issue that I think really needs to happen is that's why I believe one of Senator Deeds' bills is to make them set up an online system, a database of available beds, which the fact that we don't have that yet in the state of Virginia obviously is a tragedy in itself. Because how many more stories do we have like Senator Deeds' son that may not have ended the same way but could have, where we, be frank, just got lucky. And so I really hope that moves forward. And, you know, mental health issues for so long have been misunderstood. A lot of stigma around it. What is it? What can it cause people to do when it's really not their fault? You know, it is a disease like any other, and we need to make sure we give the resources. I support the governor's new funding, and I hope moving forward that we're able to really care for those who truly would love to be normal and live a normal life, but because of certain circumstances can't, and we owe it to help them.
There's another lingering issue involving the training centers. There was a settlement with the Department of Justice a couple of years ago. Those training centers are slowly being closed. Hopefully a community setting will provide a better place for those who are challenged mentally, but it's still a big issue, isn't it, Riley?
Big issue, and I'm on the commission that is looking at this, and Woody, let me give you an example. There was a gentleman that came to my office for 2 years, and his daughter was at Southside Training Center, and he was upset because his daughter, she was so happy where she was. They moved her to a home on Route 106 there near the courthouse in Prince George County. I toured the place myself, and he could not thank me enough. He said, this is unbelievable. He said, she's only 10 minutes from my house. He said, and she's happy as she can be. This was only 2 weeks after she had been moved. So there are stories like that. But there are some people that cannot go into that environment. They are going to have to be cared for because they need special treatment. Now, what the Justice Department did is they said that we were institutionalizing people that should not be there. And so that's why they came on to us and said something has to be done. And this was the agreement that was made. We don't have to, and it was one of the things that we do not have to close any of the institutions. But we need to do that in order to cover some of the areas. Now, the people that, the one now that we're really looking at is the one in Northern Virginia. The one in Northern Virginia is something that we've got to look at to see what we're going to do there. We don't know whether we're going to put them, you know, into group housing, or whether we're going to have to build a new place to put some of these people, or what. But Southside Training Center is scheduled to be closed down this year in July, and I think we'll probably make that.
And Delegate Massie, the majority of residents of these institutions, as I understand it, are now adults who have lived most of their lives there, and they are solely dependent upon the state and their parents for care.
Right. Yeah, it's a tough issue, Woody, because I think there's no right answer for everybody. You know, you need to have tailored care. And so I've had several constituents of mine come to me and, you know, tell me that their child, their son, and they're very passionate, you know, is doing really well in the training centers. And they think they need the intensity of care in the community that a training center has. Plus, those training centers are closer by to where they live than the group home they want to send them to. So it's a really difficult issue. And you know, we're trying here again to find the right thing to do, you know, for each individual, and it's going to be some combination of some will do better in community homes. I think some will do better staying in a training center. So we're going to keep open the South Side, and maybe we're figuring out what to do up in Northern Virginia and try to get, you know, everybody in the right. But these are people that, you know, need the state of Virginia, and, you know, these are the kind of people that we've got to help, and we'll find the right environment for each individual.
Delegate Farrell, let's turn to the subject of ethics reform. It was in the news during the last gubernatorial campaign. It's still in the news to some extent. It's being debated here in the General Assembly. What do you think is the proper course of action for the General Assembly to take in that regard?
Well, I think first and foremost is transparency, obviously. That's why and if you take a gift, you need to report it. If your family member does, you need to report it. I know these guys are also very careful with it as well and very good at their disclosures. I personally, you'll see in my report, I think in my career so far, I've only taken one gift over $50. And it was a dinner I went to, I think, before I even started my first session, before I really knew what was going on. I reported it. But since then, I haven't. I find it's just much easier to just not do it and not worry about it. And it makes my life easier, you know. And so I think going forward, we need to make sure there's transparency. And I actually am for the ban to be not only on tangible but intangible gifts as well. Which is not in the reform package. Some of my colleagues may not agree with me, but I hope they come around. I personally think we owe it to our constituents to have something like that in place.
Delegate Ingram, is there potential for the General Assembly to go too far? Sometimes when there's a major controversial issue, that does happen. Well,
we have a compromise now among the Republicans and the Democrats that I think is a good compromise. What they're putting forward is, of course, disclosure, but also any disclosure for gifts, okay? And tangible gifts will be capped at $250, okay? Anything tangible, which would whether be a watch or suit or whatever. Now, the part that is a little bit tough to do, I'll give you an example. I was fortunate enough to have a trip to Turkey year before last, not this past year, but year before last. I had to pay my own airfare over there, but while I was there, hotel, meals, and everything were included. I reported it, put it on my economic interest statement, that the trip was worth, you know, their part that they paid somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,200, whatever it may be. I think disclosure. Now, I learned a lot. It didn't cost the taxpayers of this Commonwealth one dime, not a penny. But I disclosed it because it was still a gift. It was still a gift, okay? But it was travel. It wasn't a tangible gift, but it was something that I reported. I report everything. if my son goes with me, let's say that someone invites me to play golf or go to a ball game, and a lot of times they'll invite my son. He's 40 years old. I report it. I put down, even though I don't have to, I put it down because I feel like that, just like Peter said, I think that the public needs to know what you're getting. And if you're getting a gift, I think the public should know.
Transparency and disclosure, I take it is good.
Yeah, look, we're going to have ethics reform. We need to have ethics reform. At the same time, I think we need to be a little bit careful. I mean, one of the daunting jobs that Peter and Riley and I face, we sit in judgment of every issue A to Z in the state of Virginia, Woody. Now, how much of that spectrum is any one individual an expert in? It's a very narrow sliver. So we got a lot to learn. And so what I don't think the people of Virginia want to exclude us from is those learning opportunities. I rarely take just an outright gift. But if somebody is going to educate me on an issue that I need educating on, and it involves travel or expense, then I think it's important. The people of Virginia, and it's not costing the people of Virginia anything. We need that education to make good public policy. I'll just give you an example. Peter's father took me out to Wise County to see they got a $1.7 billion investment out there in a clean coal-fired facility. It was
that's Dominion.
That's Dominion,
right.
And it's we flew out there, and it was an incredibly educational trip for me to learn about things that I need to know about to make good public policy decisions. And it didn't cost us, the taxpayers of Virginia, a dime. That's the kind of education. So we're going to have transparency. We're going to have ethics reform. But at the same time, like you said, we don't want the pendulum to swing so far that I can't get, and Peter and Riley can't get educated on the public policy issues that we got to make big decisions on that we are not experts in.
Riley, I promised you an opportunity to talk about your check cashing legislation. We've got about a minute and a half left, and I know you wanted to pull something out.
Here it is.
And show it to the camera.
I just want to show you this, because if you will look at that, it says no ID required. Woody, I've been fighting this little bill for 3 years, and all it says is they must have some type of identification. And what is happening is the elderly especially are being taken advantage of, because little Johnny, grandson, comes in, tears the bottom check out of Grandma's checkbook, writes himself a check or somebody else a check for $200 or $100, takes a check cashing place, it sucks it right out of the account with that machine, just like they do it somewhere else, at Dillard's or Sam's Club. And what happens is by the time grandmother finds out about it, 3 weeks later when she gets her bank statement, and she knows, in fact, her daughter, which is her son that's 17 years old, her daughter is the one that called me and said something needs to be done about this. But anyway, I don't understand why anyone would cash a check without ID.
Thank you. Appreciate your time. Good luck in this session. Delegate Massie, Ingram, and Farrell.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Woody.
Thank you for watching Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Comcast, connecting Virginians to their government. Until next time, I'm Woody Evans.